Hello, my name is Christine and I run a vintage shop called Prima Treasures on Etsy. Today I wanted to talk to you about this really cool stuff that I have found in the past, and I have one with me now, and that is these old wall shields that I think are from like the 60s, the 70s era, that time frame. Anyway, personally I think it's really interesting that this type of thing is even available on the consumer market, because this is, something we think of high end in a castle or whatever, but apparently they actually made some for the consumer market. So this particular one that I wanted to show is what I consider to be the high end of these consumer level wall decor shields. And the reason I think that is because the the swords that come with this particular type tend to be pretty ornate. Now, you can't see it here, but how I know who made this particular kind is because on the swords you can see that there's all this detailed enameling, but usually in very tiny print it'll say Toledo on it, and they're based in Spain. So I kind of assumed that this was like a travel souvenir somebody might have picked up. And not to say that they would have gotten it cheap necessarily, because I don't think that's true. But I see enough of these floating around that I think it was a reasonably common souvenir item for people to purchase while they were there. So anyway, you can kind of see from looking at it here that you've got, the handle of the sword is fairly decorative. Then you've got all of this really detailed enameling down the side of the blade. And then on top of that you have this really ornate wooden shield that holds them. So right here you can see that we've got this double-headed eagle or griffin, and we've got very detailed feathers here, including, little designs on the feathers, so it's pretty ornate. And then on the front you've got this separate wood piece that's like a medallion, and it's decorated with more griffins and castles in the coat of arms that's on it. What you can't see in the video is that on the back of this shield, back there, are two large bolts that allow you to kind of reposition and kind of slide this forward and backward a little bit, so you can make room for the shields to actually go in and then snug it down when you have them positioned where you want them. But as I said before, these are fully usable separate swords in the shield. So you could, if you wanted to, literally take them out, sword play with them, show it off to your friends, and then put them back in and, have an impressive wall decor piece. I mean, I gotta think that anybody who's got something like this in their man cave is gonna be the talk of all their friends. So I really like these because they just have that cool visual impact. And you can't get something like that nowadays, or at least I don't know how you would. So for me, it's exciting to have them because I always think of this as being like the big statement piece for someone's den or whatever room they're going to put it in. Anyway, there are some others that are floating around out there that aren't quite as nice as these. So in a separate video, I'm going to show you that version of it and give you some history on that. Okay, I've set up my second shield, and as you can see, it's slightly smaller than the first one that we had. It's also notably less ornate, so this is why I consider it to be a secondary item compared to the first one that we showed, because it's not as heavily designed. You can see, I hope from here, that the shields are just plain metal with a little bit of decoration on the handle, and it pretty much matches the trim on the shield itself. So these weapons, they don't really come out. They don't really function on their own as a weapon the way the other one did. I mean, you can't really use them as a weapon. They're decorative, but they do slide out, and you can use them as you would a weapon if you were doing, cosplay or whatever. But these are not really removable, and they're purely decorative to go with this shield. Now, one thing I want to point out that hopefully you've noticed right in the middle here, it has a fouled anchor and has the USN on it for the Navy. They don't all look like this. Basically, what the types of variations that you would see would be this background fabric, which is black on this one. I've seen gold and I've seen red. So different colors of fabric here. And then usually this center piece will be different types of usually medieval theme. This shield that has the USN on it is kind of different in that regard, although I have seen this a few times. And one of the specific things that helps me know what the age of this particular shield is that we actually went to an estate sale and we found one very much like this with the USN on it. And on the back, the owners had put the name badge and some other swag from the guy who bought it. And it turned out, you know, he was retired Navy and he had been, I believe, either the Korea or Vietnam War, but either way, so you're talking 60s, 70s, we were told that he brought the shield back with him as a souvenir. So that gives you a rough time frame for this particular look, but most of them do not have the Navy thing going. I'm assuming they made that as an option to kind of appeal to the sailors that were coming over, but most of the ones I see will have either a knight on a horse or just some other medieval, you know, design in the middle. So that's mostly what you're going to see if you happen to spot a shield like this, is that it's going to have kind of a generic medieval design. But hopefully you can see here that the carvings in the wood, less ornate. The metal is, it almost looks like hammered tin maybe, or pot metal. I'm not sure, but it's not a particularly high quality metal. The designs are pretty basic essentially. So this particular one, you know, you're going to see a lot cheaper than the first one I featured. Something like this you could probably pick up for, you know, anywhere between 100, 200, maybe 250, depending on, you know, the seller and how much, you know, shipping might run or whatever. Whereas the other one, you could easily pay, you know, $300, $400, $500 for that particular piece. So, you know, if this look works for you and you're perfectly happy, then save yourself some money. Go for this. It's still a very impressive piece. I believe it's, you know, right around 2 feet, maybe a little over 2 feet tall. So as statement pieces go, it's still a nice big size, you know, a lot of visual impact, and especially if you're in the Navy, I mean, I'm not sure you could actually do better than this in terms of a wall decor piece. But, you know, in general, these are simpler and tend to be less expensive. So if you see one for under 100, that's a pretty good deal. I'd grab it if you have any interest at all. But it's not unreasonable to pay as much as 200, maybe 250 for something like this. I'd be leery of going higher than that, because once you get into the 300 to 500 price point, you probably could get your hands on the first shield of one of those types and get something that's going to have a little bit more visual interest to it. So anyway, I wanted to feature these because I find these very unusual as far as, you know, we don't see a lot of medieval decor in, you know, retail stores and stuff. And when we do, it's small things. But these are huge and they would make a great statement piece for a wall. So, you know, if you're even remotely into that, vintage is worth a look purely for items of this type. Something that a retail store would probably never sell you, but you can find it on the vintage market or at an estate sale. So I hope you've learned something today, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you.